Hi and welcome to Lincolnshire Fen Crafts Bumblebee brooch tutorial. We're going to be making this gorgeous little bumbler. Let's get going. You're going to start off with some wool top, just a little bit, and we're going to use it to wrap around a barbecue stick. This way it ensures that you get a really nice shape, and it's also really firm. You can really pull on that wool and keep it nice and tight. Keep wrapping it round, keep it firm, no need to use your needle yet. You'll just be using a standard 38 needle. And when you're doing it, just push down the sides, be careful not to hit the wood with your needle because you don't want to break it. And flatten that bottom as well. So you see how you're getting a really nice shape. Keep winding that round, keep it moving. And then as you come to the end, just catching those little wisps near the end. Remember, keep those ends nice and firm as well, any loose bits. Keep it going, nice and firm, creating that really nice shape. And you see how easy it was to create that shape. And then those final little bits, just going to pull those round and just tack them in gently with your felting needle. Keep it going till all those bits are in. You're not going to see any of this, so don't worry too much about any lumps and bumps. It's not even going to be visible, but what we've done is created a really nice core shape that's nice and firm. And there's a reason why it's a different colour to the rest of the bumblebee. Just keep going round, push that needle in the back, make sure that back's nice and firm. We need a nice firm base for this. Keep checking the shape as well, make sure it's nice and even. Doesn't, like I said, doesn't matter about any lumps and bumps, but just make sure that shape's even. And then you can just slide it off the stick. Continue to work it. You can work diagonally now, so then you're shaping it at the front and at the back. One end will sort of be a bit flatter, but it doesn't really matter, even if they're both the same. It won't matter with regards to the finished shape, but I like to have sort of the back end flat and then the front end with like just a little curved point. Just like a cone with a little cylinder shape with a little round end. And then we're going to take some wool batting. Now this is great because you can really wrap this round like a little blanket and pull it quite tightly, and it wraps round. It works really well because it's short fibres, it's nice and loose, but you can still do this with a wool top. I'm using a black Jacob batting here. I'm pulling off any excess as well as we go. Just pull that around, pull it tight, use your fingers to pull it round tight. You're wrapping it around, bring all those ends underneath the bumblebee, because that's where we want to bring everything together. So any untidiness is actually in one spot, but you won't see it. Keep it moving round, keep tidying it up. Use your fingers to pull in any loose bits all towards that centre spot, because what we don't want to do is lose that shape that we've created underneath. So if it's all loose, you won't have that nice shape that you've created with that white wool top that you used to wrap around the barbecue stick. Keep it going, have a little check. If there's any bald spots as well, we'll be able to cover those in a minute. Keep it tidy and use that needle diagonally as well. It means that you then just you're working the top surface. A nice shape. We've got a bit of a bald patch there, so let's pop some wool top on that. Sorry, some wool batting on top of that, just a little bit. You won't even see where it's joined. Just tack that on nice and gently, just till it holds. Pull in all those loose bits, and use your needle as well to pull in all those loose bits. Your fingers, your needle, you use whatever tools you need to. And you see how this is nicely coming together now. We've got a good shape. So we're ready to pop on the head. I'm going to use the barbecue stick again. Barbecue sticks are brilliant. And you can see this little face we've got head at the front, just an extension of what we've already created. Tiny piece of the wool batting. Wrap it round like you did for the body. Really nice and tight. No need to felt anything just yet. Keep wrapping it round. Use your fingers. Nice and tight. And then finally, we're just going to use the needle just down the side of that wooden skewer just to secure it. We're keeping the ends loose though as well, because we're going to felt those loose ends into the front of the body that we've created. It's really, really simple way. And this also is a brilliant way to make gnome noses. If you've seen my previous video tutorials, you'll know that. Get that loose end at the front of that body and just felt it in just till it's firmly held. And can you see one end's now loose? Turn it over and felt on the other side. That's looking really good. Just felt it on, nice and secure. You don't want this to come off, but try not to felt down the centre of it. Use felt down the side so that you're not flattening it, because we want that to protrude from the face, because we're going to sew the eyes onto this. Can you see? Just felt down the edges until that's nice and firmly attached. And then you're going to create those lovely bumblebee stripes. I've got some nice mustard wool top here. I like using this because you can stretch this really tightly without it breaking, which you can't do with the carded wool. So, you know, I tend to use a mixture of wools. So take it round so that you fix it underneath the bumblebee. Just tack that end, and then what you're going to do is you're going to pull that end round until it's nice and tight and it meets where you've just felted. And you'll have a little bit of loose at the end, which you can trim off or felt in. Depends how long it is. This will probably need trimming. And then just felt gently around, but don't make too many needle marks in the on the top of the body, because you want that to look nice and smart. I'm just going to trim this off because it's quite long. And because you've felted in the rest of it, that will hold nicely. Just tuck those ends in. And then we're going to do the same again. So you can see where you've got the wings next. So you want to leave a gap for the wings, and then pop on another nice strip of that mustard. Yellow will be fine, or orange, but I've got a nice mustard. I think it's a Corriedale wool top that I'm using here. Really lovely colour. Use it for pumpkins as well. And there you go. Just repeat the same. Make sure that's nicely tacked in. We haven't got so much of a long tail there, so I can just felt that in. And then we're going to move on to the bottom of the bumblebee. So you can see you've got a nice circle there, but it can be a bit tricky to create a circle. So we're going to create it in two halves. Little bundle of wool in your hands, roll it around backwards and forwards till you create a seed shape. Roll really firmly backwards and forwards till it firms up a little bit. No need to do any felting, and then pop that on like you did with the head. The loose ends, pop them on. Looks a bit odd at the moment, but we're going to tease all that wool out, because we're going to put another piece on as well. So we'll tease all that wool out together when we've got the second piece on. So do the same again. Roll up a nice bundle of wool, not too much, backwards and forwards, and pop right next to it, right next to the other piece. Felt those ends in the same spots, and then just tease that wool over so that you can't see that seam, that join, and then just work around the edges, creating that nice circular shape. And check it as well from the, keep checking it, check it from the front and the sides to make sure it all looks nice and even. So it's a bit off there, so I'm just going to pull it over. If it's not even, you can just pull it over with your fingers. That's looking better. Just a little bit more felting here, just to secure it and tidy it up. Just pop in those sides. Make sure you've got a nice sort of circular shape. And keep felting that in. And what you can do as well is you can smooth over it with your fingers just to remove any needle marks. But it won't matter, because we're going to be fluffing this up later on, so you won't even see them. There we go, ready for our next part. So I think what we're going to do is pop on the wings. Yeah, we'll pop on the wings. I've got some wool batting here. You can use wool top, it's just what I had to hand. 2 pieces of small pieces equal in size. So if you start off with 2 pieces equal in size, and you know your wings are going to be equal sizes, fold in half and create a petal shape, and just rub those ends, fold in half and then just twizzle those ends or rub those ends so that they mat together, and then you've already created sort of a petal shape which you can now create into a wing. So what we're going to do is we're going to felt this. I've got 2 needle holder here, but what single one's fine. I'm just using this to speed it up, and we're just matting that wool. Bring those edges in so you can start with the needle so you can see that shape starting to create, and do the same on the other one as well. If you do them both at the same time, it's easier to kind of get them matching. You can see where you're at each stage, and keep pulling them in, those edges. You can use your fingers for that as well. Turn them over, don't let it stick. Yeah, I'm going to put a mat on because it sticks to the hessian really easily, and this also prolongs the life of your hessian mat. I'm going to speed up the process now. This is a multi-tool. This has 7 needles in it. It's got a guard, and it's like a punch tool, so it punches backwards and forwards really quickly, and it really speeds up and smooths the wool. But you don't need it. 1 single needle is absolutely fine. Go back to the single needle and continue to bring those edges in to reduce that wing size. And what you're also doing as well, you're creating a nice edge. There's going to be no raw edges, so this is going to be a nice soft edge, and it's also going to really thicken up that wing. And keep it going. I'm going back to the tool again just for a moment, just to speed up the process. And you see how that's flattening that out really nicely. And they're just pulling off really easily now, which means that most of the wool's now felted. Be careful when you're shaping the sides. Keep those fingers apart and away from that needle. It's really easy to poke yourself here, so please be careful. You can actually pop that in between a piece of cardboard folded over and do it if you're really worried about your fingers. Keep shaping. Can you see how we're working that shape now, comparing it to the other bumblebee that I've got? You can stretch it out as well. If you've lost that shape a bit, or it's a bit wide and you want to lengthen it, you can actually just pull, hold one end with your fingers and pull with the other end. And you see how easily we've shaped that, and then aim for a similar shape and size with the other wing. It won't be exact, it never is, so don't worry too much about that. But just keep comparing. Keep moving around, keep shaping. Almost there. That's looking good. Final felt with a multi-tool. I'm quite pleased with those. They look quite nice actually. I've got a little bit of a lumpy bit there, so I'm just going to poke that in with a needle. Again, be careful with your fingers. Those ends, just pull off any loose bits that you can get hold of, because we're going to join these together. So those loose ends, just felt those together, and it's just much easier to attach to the bumblebee if you do it this way, and then that way you can guarantee everything's central and the wings are going to be equal. Rub that little bit in between your fingers or twizzle it, and that just mats that centerpiece together so it's not too thick. Looks a bit like a bow tie when you've done it. Find where you're popping it onto your bumblebee, and then just in the center, poke it right down into the bumblebee's back. And what you will find, you will see these wings start to lift up on their own. And that's because as you're pushing that wool through, then it's drawing up the wings, which is exactly what you want. Really simple, but it's just a nice little technique. And make sure they're nice and firmly stuck in there. Quite pleased with those, they look nice. And you bend them over as well, give them a little jaunty angle, they look quite sweet. But entirely up to you. Make sure as well that they're in the middle and they're in line with the head. So we're going to pop a couple of eyes on here. There is another video tutorial to show you how to sew them on, so I won't go through the whole process of sewing them on, but I'm just using black glass beads, and I'm just using some black thread. The beads have got a hole in the middle, and I'm just going to sew backwards and forwards a few times. So the eyes are on, as you can see. And we're now going to use a reverse needle. That white wool that we use in the beginning, we're going to use the reverse needle, which draws that core out. So we're creating some nice colour above the eyes, because the eyes get a bit lost. So can you see how I'm drawing that white wool out, and I'm giving them like little white eyebrows, which is so effective. Can you see there? And then I'm just going to trim them back. And this is when the core, having a different colour core really works well, because you can get that reverse felting needle on. I'm just going to do the body a little bit as well. And it creates that really nice fluffy effect that you see on a bumblebee. See all these long bits? So I'm just going to trim those off. Quite close to the body, but not too close. And then tidy up any other areas as well. Just be careful you don't cut into the wings. If you want to cut off any fluffy bits, I don't mind the fluffy bits, but you might like to neaten it. And I'm just going into the bottom with the reverse needle, just to fluff up the back end of the bumblebee, which looks really nice. And that's why I said it doesn't matter if there's any needle marks there, because you're not going to see them. And I think we're just about ready to put the little antennae on. So for the antenna, you want just a tiny piece of the same colour wool batting that you used to cover the body. Or you can use a black, just a normal black would be fine. Just twizzle it in between your fingers, no need to felt it, just a really thin piece. Work it with your fingers till it starts to mat together. It'll be too long at this point, but don't worry about that. Find the place on the head where you want it, wherever you find that you're happy with it. I've put mine just next to that stripe and above the eyes. So felt into the centre, and that starts to draw that wool in, so it will shorten the antenna. I'm just going to pull those ends off because they're quite long, and then twizzle. I can twizzle the ends. I might need to trim them though, they might still be a bit long. We'll see. Yeah, I think they are. We'll just snip those ends off and then twizzle those ends again to mat those ends together, and there you go. That is your bumblebee finished and ready to turn into a brooch. Thanks for joining me.